All right. So while we are waiting on that to get set up, guys, let me just go over a couple of things. Again, want to welcome you to this month's webinar. It is July 30th, 2020. We are in the midst of the global pandemic known as the coronavirus. And we are very, very honored at the law office of David Shapiro to have Hall of Fame wide receiver who is now joining us on this Zoom webinar, and San Diego resident himself, Andre Reed. Andre, thank you so much for being here tonight.
No, thank you guys. I'm just so bad with phones, and I'm totally. It was my girlfriend that hooked it up.
Well, now that we got that out of the way.
I wasn't home, guys.
I could run a good route, but I can't figure out my phone, man. That's the problem.
That's all right. We all have things. We all have things we're great at. Andre, it's also Stefano Malea, my partner at the law firm's here as well. You could see him.
Okay.
And then we have a couple of attendees as well. Obviously, people that we've invited, people that have come from the community.
Right.
You know, I just go over a quick introduction for those of you who basically have lived under a rock in the mid 80s through 2000. Andre was one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver of his generation. He played primarily for the Buffalo Bills from the mid 80s till 1999 or so. While Andre was leaving Buffalo, I was starting my life in Buffalo as a freshman at the University of Buffalo in 1999. Andre was elected to the Hall of Fame in 2014 and was an integral part of a team. What was it, 7 Hall of Famers, Andre, on those Bills teams in the 90s?
Yeah, we'll say 7, maybe 9 or 10, but we'll say 7.
Well, there we go. And one of the key pieces of those great Bills teams of the early 1990s. So Andre is here, obviously, in San Diego, and he does a ton of charity work in San Diego. Donated his time recently with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society for this call. That was an organization that myself and the firm was a part of. I ran for Man of the Year for 2020 for the big fundraiser, and it was a crazy amount of money. Everyone was able to raise for that, and that put Andre and myself in touch. And I figured, you know, who better with the connections with Buffalo, with football. I mean, the guy's in the Hall of Fame, for God's sakes, and he does a ton of great work in San Diego. And we invited Andre to come on and talk about lessons that he's learned in life and in sports that he's lived through and how they relate to business. Because myself and Stefano obviously are continuing to grow our firm. And, you know, each year we are able to help a lot of people. And we're able to accomplish some things that we should be really proud of and being able to help the community. But we always feel like, you know, we're not necessarily hitting our ultimate goal. And, you know, that's a struggle in life, personally, professionally, no matter what you're doing, to be able to maybe come a little bit short of the ultimate goal, but no, you had a great year, your team had a great year, and to be able to use that to build off of that and come stronger the next year. And we figured who better to talk to you about that in life, sports, and business than Andre Reed. So Andre, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to mute myself. And if you could just talk about your experience and how you believe that all relates, obviously, to life and business, your time in the league, and obviously the great work. We'd love to hear about the work you're continuing to do in San Diego, how we could all help as well.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me. Despite all the little things that's going on here and trying to figure out how to do this Zoom thing, I've done a bunch of them over the past 4 months, as everybody knows, with the pandemic and the COVID thing going on. It's been a struggle for most people, not only to get back on their feet, but to change what they've been doing. And this whole pandemic thing has made us change what we're doing, all the way from business to sports to everyday things that everyday people do. And, you know, I'm no different than anybody else. I've been fortunate enough to be on a lot of Zoom calls the past 4 months about not only what's going on in this country, but talking about sports, what's going on in the NFL, what's going on in sports in general. And I've put my 2 cents in as much as I can. And I think as an athlete, it's so important as a figure, if you want to call me that when you do have a chance to talk about things, people do listen, and they want to hear from your perspective of what you think, how not only how this world's going to get better, but how are you going to do better in business, how are you going to do better in everything. And this has challenged all of us, and I'm no different than anybody else. So I'm challenged every day. And again, it's a pleasure to be with everybody that's on the webinar. and to speak to everybody and tell a little bit about myself and my history and what I went through as a kid and all that kind of crazy stuff, and to where I'm at today. And that's and again, you mentioned it. It's giving back to those less fortunate, as myself. Growing up in the Boys and Girls Clubs for 10 years as a kid really set the tone for me as an athlete, as a person, and now giving back to them, being an ambassador for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, like Shaq and Jennifer Lopez and Cuba Gooding and all these great actors and actresses that have done some great things through the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. I'm glad to be a part of that. If you would have told me as a 14-year-old, with a big afro, just going to Boys and Girls Clubs every day and just going to school and trying to better myself and be a good person, not only because of the situation I was in, to be in this situation, there's no way I would have been thinking about this and to be talking to you guys. So I'm glad to be a part of this.
Absolutely. We're like you said, we're great to have you here. And Andre, if you could just talk, I mean, the floor is yours as far as, as a kid and lessons you learned, and then your time in the league. And primarily when you get to that part, we'd love to hear about how, when you get into the early 90s and you guys have such great success as a team, but you fall up short in that first Super Bowl with the Giants, how you build on that to come back the next year and come back stronger and stronger, where so many teams, so many businesses, so many people would start playing the blame game. And you see in sports and in business, great one-year wonders sort of disintegrate quick because they maybe don't have the leadership or don't have the will or the willingness to put their own egos aside. And I know your team had a lot of egos. It's well documented, some of the characters you guys had on that team. But in spite of that, or because of that, you were able to achieve great success.
Yeah, that's greatly put. I'll just start from the beginning. I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania. If anybody knows who Billy Joel is, I'm sure everybody listening and watching knows who Billy Joel is. He wrote a song about Allentown, Pennsylvania. It's a little, small town, about not as big as, a little bigger than Buffalo, maybe about the same amount of people. But I grew up in an interracial family. My dad black, my mom white, my whole family just white. And I had a lot of things going through my mind as a kid of not only being teased, but, why is your mom this color? Why is your dad that color? Your brothers are this color, your sister's this color, your uncles and aunts are all this. And I said, well, when it really comes down to it, we're just all family. And I think I really learned a lot early from my dad it's kind of like an old cliche. You say, well, it doesn't matter what color you are, or where you're from, how much money you have. But it seems like in this world now, that does matter to a certain point. And as I got older, I realized that the only way that I could overcome things of that nature is to get my own identity. And I did, and that was through sports. And sports was such an integral part, and it still is. It's been my foundation my whole life. Not only what I did, but mentoring kids now, young kids coming out, high school, college, pros. I've been put in that position to do that. And I think I take that very seriously because somebody did that for me at that age. And I'm just reciprocating that back to these kids so they can be, not only great athletes, but they can be great people. And my dad always told me, you know what? If you put in 50% in something, that's what you're usually going to get out of it. It's seldom that you get that 100% out. I mean, that does happen, but the effort and just like in business, the effort you put in, you're going to get that same effort out. And then whatever's after that is just a bonus. And you talked about our football teams, and we might not have been the greatest team that was stacked, but you weren't going to tell us that we weren't going to give the effort. And what we did is documented. But, went to high school in Allentown and was a little kid and didn't think football was going to be anything. I just wanted to play football because I grew up playing football with all my friends and my brothers. And it really taught me a lot about life, and you mentioned about, some of the things that our team went through about not giving up and realizing that perseverance really is going to pay in the end. of never quitting, of always knowing that you got to go that extra yard because you never know what's going to be beyond that if you don't try. And again, that is really the basis of how I teach young kids. If I'm going to talk to them about when they ask me questions, well, how did you become a Hall of Famer? How did you do this? How did you do that? And I said, well, I believed in myself, number one. And number two is I knew that not everything was going to be great, but I knew if I believed in myself that things could get better. That's the drive that I had. And that's what our team had over those years in the Super Bowl, all those years, playing there in Buffalo, is that we knew that it was going to be difficult, but, we were always going to be there, and they had to tend with us. And that taught me a lot of life's lessons that I use today. And that is the basis of what I go through and what I do as far as speaking to kids in Boys and Girls Clubs and all that kind of stuff. I was a foster kid for a number of years. So I grew up in a pretty volatile situation with an alcoholic dad. One thing I did have in the family was love, and that's really what we need in this country now. We need that four-letter word a lot more. And they cared about me. They loved me. They might not have had all the means to provide to a certain point, but I knew I had a roof over my head, and they provided for me as best as they could. And that taught me a lot about their resolve too. My dad was a construction worker. He worked 9 to 5. My mom worked in a factory. And I always tell this story that as a 10-year-old, I used to walk by her factory and see her at a sewing machine for 9 hours. She would work and have, work her knuckles to the bone. My dad did that too as a construction worker. He came home with dirty hands. My mom came home with blood on her hands because sometimes the needle, hit her fingers. And that really taught me a lot about how hard they work and what they were about. And that was instilled in me as a kid. And that's what I was known for when I played football, was being tough and just, getting knocked down, but getting right back up. And, being a foster kid, I grew up in that kind of stuff too. And it just really taught me a lot about stuff, man. And I really, really learned a lot. And that's really the basis of what I tell these kids, that I didn't have it really good. I had it bad, but you know what? It taught me a lot, and I would never change that. I mean, I changed a lot, but sometimes hard lessons you learn in life are the lessons you need. And that's what we need right now. We need these lessons taught to these kids so they can build something for themselves and, going into business. And, I've talked to a lot of kids that are going in that direction, and it's about their resolve and how they do it. And, they're on their way to becoming great business people, good community people. That's really how you get up in this world.
Okay, so you get into the league. You're what, 4th round draft pick, right?
Right.
4th round draft pick, small college in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And get drafted by the Bills, obviously. And you're familiar with Buffalo, obviously, because you grew up on the East Coast. I mean, I'm from Staten Island originally, so
okay.
familiar with the area, obviously.
What happened to the accent? Your Staten Island accent, I think.
it comes out. There's a couple of people who are watching this right now, I'm sure, could verify that at times.
Yeah, when I go back to Pennsylvania, my girlfriend Teresa knows that I've been back there because she's like, "Yeah, you brought some of that Pennsylvania back," and I don't even know I'm doing it, but.
Yep. It's been a while since I've been back on Staten Island, so it definitely comes back. But here's the thing: you get into that team now, mid '80s, right? Buffalo, when you first got into the league, obviously you didn't walk into a situation that team wasn't Super Bowl ready in the mid '80s,
no.
right? So you had that young core between you and Jim Kelly, right? Who came over from, what was he? Was he in USFL?
USFL, yes.
And then you had Thurman Thomas and Bruce Smith, and all you guys sort of came up around the same time, if my memory serves me correct. And if you could talk to us a little bit about sort of identifying, the rocks and the bedrocks of that franchise, and how you guys molded yourself into a young team, within just a couple of years of you being in the league, being one of the best teams and one of the best franchises around.
Well, when you were back in Buffalo, I'm sure the team was not good. I got to Buffalo in 1985. The previous 2 years, they won 4 games. So they were 4-28 in 2 years. So it wasn't really until not Bill Polian, but John Butler. If you remember John Butler was the GM before Bill Polian. And I think Buffalo at the time not only needed a big spark in their football team and their franchise, but they needed some leadership. And the leadership had to change in order for the team to go down that road to getting better. And when we got John Butler, and John Butler passed away years later, and then Bill Polian came in, we started molding, try to get a winning attitude. And that started with the players. And you mentioned some of the players that we ended up getting during those years, and Thurman in 1989, Cornelius, we got in a trade in 88. We got a bunch of other guys. Steve Tasker was there. He came from Houston Oilers, the old Houston Oilers. And we started putting some pieces together. And I think no matter if you put the pieces of the puzzle together, they got to mold together and they got to believe in each other. And I think Jim was probably the catalyst to all that. And once we got that and started getting these players all together and we started winning a little bit, we felt that we knew we had something. And we just started building and building and building and building on that. And, years later, people don't realize this, in a 10-year span before the Patriots were the Patriots, we won more games in a 10-year span than any team in league history. And I think that was due to the part of the front office and getting the players that we needed. And then Marv Levy coming in '86, changing that attitude to a winning attitude because it was just the same old Bills. When I got there, I just wanted to play. And after that first season I was there, I said, man, we got to get some players that really believe in winning, because we didn't believe in winning. I mean, we'd be in some games, but end up losing them because we didn't believe in why we can win the game. So that was a big, big change in the franchise when all those guys came in up in the front office, all the way from the GM down to the head coach. And it really set the tone for us for 15 years later.
Okay, so is that what you're talking about when you talk about like mindset of a champion, right? To have
the mindset of a champion is like no other. And if you look at some of the greatest athletes that ever played their sports, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady now, somebody like Mario Lemieux in hockey, somebody like Ronaldo, all these big name players that have championships, they have a championship mindset. And that's that at any cost, they're going to do whatever it takes to have that mindset. And that permeates throughout the organization, throughout the team. And that's definitely what we had. Although we didn't win a Super Bowl, that champion mindset was there every time we came in the door. And we have to, we have to have that. And in business, you got to have a champion mindset. As soon as you come through the door, whatever has to be done, you got to do it. And then do more, because that's only going to be better down in the long run.
Right. So to follow up on that, when the culture in Buffalo started changing, right? When you have Bill Polian there, the general manager, and you have Marv Levy, the great head coach,
mm-hmm.
and you start getting guys obviously that are buying into doing this together collectively for the ultimate goal, right? To get to a Super Bowl and then ultimately, hopefully, to win one.
Right.
In any business, right? In any business, as over the seasons or over the years, you have people that come and go. Obviously, like a sports team or whatever, people change
mm-hmm.
careers, they change locations, whatever the case may be. What was going on during that team that was enabling you guys? So obviously it wasn't as much turnover on an NFL roster that we see now back in the early 90s, but there was obviously guys coming and going through that roster. How were you able to basically get everyone on board, whether you're the last man on the roster, or whether you're, Andre Reed, or whether you're Jim Kelly, because, we see it so often. I'm a bit from New York, from Staten Island, we talked about, and in 1994, the Rangers won the first Stanley Cup in 54 years. And I remember hearing about it, and the Rangers were, it was a joke. They hadn't won in 54 years. They were getting taunted everywhere they went, right? when they won the Stanley Cup, everyone to a T on that team, and they literally said it. It's a first-class organization from the top to the stick boy. You know what I mean? Basically, so like the janitor, like how does that culture? It's not something just automatically happens. It's got to be stuff that's got to permeate to everyone in the building. How did that happen?
Well, you said the word right there, culture, and that's what the Bills are trying to do now is change that culture. And 4 years ago, when Sean McDermott was hired there, people up in the organization called me, they called Thurman, they called Bruce, they called Cornelius, they called Steve Tasker, and said, "Are you available at this time? The head coach wants to get together with all you guys and talk about your teams and how you did it and how you got that mindset." And I went to Buffalo and we had a nice dinner and we talked about, not only the good, the bad, the ugly, but we talked about one thing that we had was we communicated well with each other. And as soon as we stepped in the door, the communication started. You might not like that guy or like what he does or all that kind of thing. But when you step in these doors, we all got to like each other. We all got to set everything aside. And the egos, we got to put the egos aside. Because we had 7 Hall of Famers and a GM, a coach, and an owner as a Hall of Famer. So there were a lot of egos in that building. But how do you put all those egos together, flatten the curve, flatten the line, and have everybody going for the same thing? And that was really probably the biggest challenge that we had, is because we all were individuals in our own way. We all walked in that room the same way. We all played different positions, but we all had to be together. And I think that was a real big factor in us being successful in our careers is we had to take that champion mindset and be a champion of a team, not a champion of a person.
Right. And then now does that change leading up to the 90 season? Mm-hmm. That obviously gets there. There's all that buy-in. Everyone's pushing you guys. The wins are racking up. You guys are going through the playoffs. The Super Bowl against the Giants happens, right? And mm-hmm. I've talked to you before. I'm a Giants fan, but I will be the first one to admit it that you guys should have won that game, right? So that game happens, and the media, the public, everyone's blaming one person for that game, and obviously that wasn't the reason why the game ended.
Right.
So in that environment, Scott Norwood, the kicker, comes back the next year. For those of you who don't know, it came down to a final play. It was a 47-yard field goal on natural grass, and he just missed the kick, and they would have won had it went through the uprights. And a lot of people always want to blame the kicker, but there were 500 different things that could have led that game to go differently.
Exactly.
Norwood was on the team the next year, right?
Yeah, he was. Scott, again, and you hit the nail on the head. It wasn't his fault. Obviously, he didn't make the kick. But I kind of fast forward to the next 3 games, next 3 Super Bowls. Okay, if Scott does make that kick, we win the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'd have a Super Bowl ring to go with the Hall of Fame ring and all those accolades. That would be nice, but that didn't happen. So how do you get yourself up to come back the next year and the next year and the next year? And that'll never happen again. I mean, the Patriots had a chance to do that last year, and the Titans beat them in the playoffs.
Right.
So that might be the closest a team gets ever again to going to 4 straight. So we get laughed about because we didn't win, but on the flip side of that, we get admired because of that. And to realize every guy on that team that, and this is way before free agency became such a factor in the game today that it is now, we knew that we had the nucleus, we had the core players, we had the guys that could not only go back the following year, but go back the year after that and the year after that. So, and that happened. So to say that we are failures because we lost the Super Bowl, you know what? I will never say that. There's not too many teams that got 7 Hall of Famers on one team. And that is my kind of like, right to them. That's my boom to them. So, yes, that would have been nice. It wasn't meant to be. But those guys that were on that team, it wasn't just the core players and the Pro Bowlers and all that. It was the Kenny Davises. It was the Mark Pikes. It was the Will Wolfords and the Howard Ballards and the Henry Joneses and all these guys that were team players. And they had to be team players because at any time it could be your turn to get in there and make a play. And I think we all believed in that no matter what happened, we have the guys that can do that. And we did.
Was that the message year after year coming from the top, from Coach Levy too? Because I would imagine that, I mean, in one regard, I can imagine the message being the same year in, year out, because I look at it in the business that we have here, and it's, you know, say for an example, okay, last year we fell short of our ultimate goal of what we wanted to do with revenue and cases, right? But we still grew considerably. We still grew at a high level, and, you know, we're a little biased, but in our opinion, didn't dilute the quality of representation we give our clients. If anything, we enhanced on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the message may change year after year, or I could see it being the same, is that, guys, we're so close, just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Or was the message different from the leadership, either the leadership group of the veterans or from the coaches between 91 and 94?
I think the message was the same. I think for all those years, yes, we could have done things better. And just like you alluded to, we fell short of this. Okay, what do we have to do this year so this doesn't happen? And I think our players and, you know, my teammates realized that we were so close that we didn't want to, like, it seemed like guys were reinvented and rejuvenated. And again, I'm sure in your offices, when we fell short, we just got to reinvent and rejuvenate ourselves. And we got to bring some other guys in to help us rejuvenate. That was the mindset that we had, to get, a couple players here and there, or maybe if this would have happened, if that would have happened. But then again, you got to forget about that. And then you got to kind of start, you know, from a clean sheet of paper, and, you know, think about what you did, but add on to some stuff. Keep adding on. And that's what we did as a team. I think we added the players just like you would add anything else to something that you needed, you know, to a salad. You got to add this to make it right. We just added the players, and those players bought into our system, and they realized that they have to play their position, but at any time, you know, you could be a starter, and then it's going to be up to you to make the plays to get us over that hump. That's just how sports is in general. So that was the beauty of it. And to see guys grow year after year and how they would come back. Those 4 years, there was players that looked like they were lost, but after those 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, man, they were different players because they knew what we had.
Yeah. And it's sort of in the sense where everyone's sort of policing themselves. Disciplining themselves, where the coach is more of syncing everybody together, not necessarily having to motivate everybody, because everyone knew what they had.
Yeah, you were accountable. You were held accountable for everything you did. You were held accountable when you put the helmet on, and you were accountable when you took it off. And that really was, again, a foundation of our team. You know, what you do outside of here, that's your own business. But don't do something where it's going to come through these doors, because then you're going to mess us up. And we can't have a bad link in the chain, because the chain ain't going to roll the way it should. So I think every player that we had really wanted to be a part of that, and wanted to make sure that link was, you know, their part of the link was going to be tight, and they weren't going to be the weak link in the chain, if you want to say it in that way.
Right. Okay. Very, very, very informative. Couple of minutes left. I mean, going through it, obviously, I know Stefano has some questions as well.
I love that.
Yeah. Walk us through sort of after, was it the 93 season, after the 94 Super Bowl, right? What if anything changed, or was it just that you guys had that run and guys started leaving the team, or what if anything changed that made 95 or 96 different than those first four, the first four Super Bowl years?
That's a great question, because I think, you know, our core guys, if you want to say we were getting older, some new coaches came in, new head coach came in, and he wanted to go in a different direction. And at that time, I was in my 16th, I played 16, 17 seasons. I was ready, to not say call it quits, but I was kind of at the end of my career. And they had to retool again. I've been saying that word, throughout this webinar here. They were retooling, getting players and kind of starting over, if you want to call it that. The Bills of the 90s, the early 90s was leaving, was gone. And I wasn't bitter about it, but, it's kind of sad because I spent my whole career up there. And I'm not the only one that can say that. There's a lot of players that spend a lot of time in different places and realize that was a part of their life. Buffalo was a part of my life. And going up there every year, and the fans, they were kind of the fiber of me too. And I will never forget, walking through that tunnel and seeing 80,000 fans, no matter what the weather was. It could have been raining cats and dogs. They were there. And that was the beauty of that place, that they loved their team, they loved their town, and they would do anything to be there, and they were. So that's the only thing that I missed to a certain point. I mean, there were some couple other things, but, I miss those fans. Those fans were some of the greatest fans in sports. And, by far they earned that. They definitely earned that.
What was the feeling like coming back from, I'm assuming it was after all 4 of those years in the Super Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
and being greeted at the airport at whatever time it was, and sub-zero wind chill. I mean, again, I lived there for 4 years.
Oh, yeah, we're out there.
I'll be the first one to admit there'll be days at a time where I wanted nothing to do with being outside. And these people are out there. They're devastated. In some instances, as much as the players after those gut-wrenching losses, but to still come out there and support you guys. I mean, I'm sure that must have been such a pick-me-up getting off those planes.
Yeah, those fans are great. They show up and they support you. And there were some fans out there one year with no shirts on in the cold like that. And this is like 3 a.m. Geez, bro, what are you doing? And they're just out there yelling and screaming, and they're just some loyal fans. And one game I think probably that's, people always ask me, well, what's your greatest game? And I played in a lot of good ones and had some good stats in a lot of games. But overall, probably in one game, probably the comeback in '93 against Houston is probably the greatest complete game that I ever played in, that I ever was a part of, because it had every single scenario in that game. And I don't know if people were watching that game. They probably turned it off. A lot of Bills fans turned that TV off.
Down what? 30 down. For those of you who don't know, this is what, 92 or 93?
The end of the 92 season. Yeah.
End
So
of
93.
Yep. So 93 after a couple of Super Bowls, best team, in that era, down 32, right? 32 at halftime at home to the real Houston Oilers with Warren.
Real Houston Oilers. Yeah.
Yeah. Down
we weren't feeling too good, believe me, because a week before we had played them in the last game of the season down in the Astrodome, the old Astrodome in Houston. And a lot of times I thought that was going to fall down on us. I was like, let's play and get out of here. But we lost to them pretty big the week before. We lost 28-3 down there the week before. And it's ironic that at halftime we were losing 28-3 the following week because we had to play them in a wild card game. And they come out, score again on an interception. So it's 35-3 with about a quarter and a half left. So basically we're at home. Fans are leaving. We're not looking too hot. We're not thinking that we have a chance to a certain point. Did I think we had a chance? Maybe about a 20% chance of winning that game. I mean, I'm going to be honest. But I think, all the stars were aligned, and we started getting breaks, and we started capitalizing on these breaks. And then the crowd got into it, and then it was over for them. So we came back from 32 down to win 41-38.
And that's something I think that a lot of people maybe who are on this call, either, again, personally or professionally, have been beaten down and felt like, you know, they can't come back from something, whether it's a personal situation, whether it's a bad life experience, whether it's the consequences of some decisions they might have made, and or even from a business sense, you know, selfishly, it's the first half of 2020 in the middle of a global pandemic with all this uncertainty and everything going on. And I mean, what in that moment at halftime, right? You guys are down, you said 20, you guys just said it down 28-3. And I'm say, or say, for example, if your video goes out in the middle of a call like mine just did.
Yeah, what's going on here?
I don't know, but I'm gonna stick with what
stick with it, man.
I'm gonna stick with what got me here and go from there. So in that moment, I mean, what you guys are down 25 at halftime, right? Throw a pick on the next possession, going into the third quarter. What gets you out of that hole? Because you're saying, you know, the guy who had 3 touchdowns in the second half and was as instrumental as anybody in coming back and winning that game. You're saying you thought you had a 20% chance of winning. So what is going on the sidelines to get everyone to start pulling in the same direction to not only come back, but to win that game and then to make the Super Bowl that year?
Well, that's when you rely on your veterans. And we had guys on the sideline that were, you know, just kept saying that, you know, we can overcome this. We could do this. And, you know, people don't realize, or if they do watch a game, I scored 3 touchdowns in a minute 17. So I was a little bit of a spark for everybody else. And Frank Reich, who's he's the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts right now, was the quarterback that whole game. Jim Kelly didn't play. So, you know, not only Frank orchestrated that, but he orchestrated the greatest comeback in college football at the time too. So that's just a little tidbit for people to realize. But I think we fed on everybody else on the sideline, and we fed on the fans. And once you get that, man, it is, you know, just like, you know, what in your office and all the people in your office, and you got to feed on each other. If somebody does something good, you got to realize what's going on and kind of get some food off of that. You know, they say, hey, man, it's time for me to eat. A lot of guys say that. And you got to go get you some. And you got to, you know, not only contribute, but once you do, somebody else is going to see that, and then it's going to make them step up. And maybe they'll do something extraordinary they thought they couldn't do. So we definitely relied on that. And it was, again, an atmosphere like I never been involved in any football game I ever played in, all the way from Pop Warner to the last game I played.
Yeah, I remember hearing the stories when I moved out there about people trying to get back into the stadium who had mailed it in and written you guys off, and they're in the car.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have, you know, they didn't have the internet, and they didn't have all these different feeds they have now to watch a game. You had cable, and you had, you know, whatever else you had that you had to go to somewhere else where they had the game. So a lot of these people were leaving the game, and a lot of them were trying to jump the fence to get back in. And there was so many people jumping the fence that the stadium security just let them in. And every time I go back to Buffalo, they talk about the comeback game, and I go, hey, were you there? Did you leave at halftime? No, I didn't leave at halftime. So that's always a good, funny thing I talk to people about when I get there sometimes.
For sure. Andre, I just see a comment in the comment section here from Charles Sevilla, who is a fantastic appellate attorney here in California, and someone that Stefano and I know, who said, I saw you play in the greatest comeback game against Houston. Actually, Chuck got ahead of us a little bit. 3 touchdowns. Thank you for the thrill. Obvious lesson, never give up. And it's a lesson for the work that we do, being criminal defense lawyers. You know, we're up against odds that sort of feel like we're down 60 points at halftime sometimes.
Exactly. Sometimes you're down 160.
Right. And quite frankly, where we think we'd love to have a 20% chance to win at a trial or a 20% chance to get an outcome on a case, because the facts or because the odds are stacked against us or our clients aren't helping us too much, whatever the case may be. What I'd like to do, Andre, I want to invite everyone to type your questions. If you have questions for Andre in the Q&A.
I want to show this right here real quick.
Show and tell.
So this is my face. So this is a replica bust of my Hall of Fame bust in Canton, which is made of bronze. This one's made of resin. So there's only 380 Hall of Famers on the planet in the NFL. And there's only 181 living. So if you look at these numbers, I know you talk about numbers a lot. The percentage of even making the NFL is like 0.00 whatever. The NFL Hall of Fame is even less than that. So a young kid from a little small town in Pennsylvania, a foster kid, a kid that grew up with an alcoholic dad, was in drama most of the time. If they would have asked me and told me, yeah, one day you're going to be a Hall of Fame football player, I don't know. I think my mouth would have dropped. I would have been like, yeah, what does that mean? Really? So that's a game changer, man. And just looking at all those stats about all the guys that, Canton's not going on this year, obviously because of COVID, but every year I go back now, I see 100 gold jackets, Jim Brown and Joe Montana and all these guys. And I never thought in a million years I'd be in that room with a gold jacket on. So it is possible. And whatever you want to do in life, you got to put the work in. And you have to have a champion mindset.
Andre, thank you so much. On that note, I want to open it up to you as well while we're getting some questions coming in.
Yeah.
As far as the work that you're doing in San Diego, because obviously you grew up in Pennsylvania, you played your entire career on the East Coast, right? You're with the Bills and it finished with Washington.
Right.
You come out. How long you been in San Diego? And I know personally a lot of the work you've done with your foundation, with reading and literacy and the Boys and Girls Club. And some other things you've done, but we'd love to hear about the work you've been doing recently and how people on this webinar who are either live now or who are going to be reviewing it because we are recording it, how they could help and how they could join your cause and help touch some of the lives that you have.
Yeah, thank you very much. I started my foundation about 9-10 years ago, and basically my foundation now. To me, it's all been about kids because somebody invested their time in me as a young kid. And as a Boys and Girls Club kid, that is my mission is to inspire kids in Boys and Girls Clubs all over the country, no matter race, creed, color, wherever, economic background. It's all about not only telling my story, but realizing your full potential. And we have a reading program that is in how many, Teresa? We're in a lot of cities right now. And you want to come in? This is my girlfriend, Teresa.
I want to talk about the reading program.
Go ahead.
And yeah, go ahead.
So we've been in over 60 Boys and Girls Clubs, and Andre has been to Boys and Girls Clubs in 31 of the 50 states. So his last name's Reed, right? He told me 3 years ago when we started the program, is it weird? Would I remember if my mom ever read me a book? And I got the chills and I was like, wait a second, you don't remember your mom reading to you at night? Andre didn't grow up with books at home, and his last name's Reed. So our program's called Read with Reed, and we get kids excited about reading. Imagine if kids were as excited about completing an awesome book as they were cheering for their favorite NFL team. Like, we get kids pumped about reading, that real men read books, that real women, readers are leaders. So it's so cool. And we challenge kids to read and we give them incentives. And Andre talks about the champion mindset and how books can help you build that mindset.
It's power. Reading is power.
And then on top of that, where we really get our donations is we establish reading rooms. So Andre's legacy is in 10 Boys and Girls Clubs and counting across the country. So we take these dingy rooms, we clean them up, we paint the walls, we make bookshelves, we buy futons and rugs, and the teenagers want to sit and read. So we're actually leaving a gift to each of the clubs that's a reading room. Andre signs the wall, and the kids fight over going in there to read books. So we have a golf tournament in Del Mar, you guys.
So everybody here, the golf tournament coming in December.
So you could, by golfing, you help sponsor the reading rooms. in San Diego and beyond.
We've been to San Marcos is the one that we go to a lot here in San Diego.
We've been, over 60 clubs, but San Marcos and Boys and Girls Club of San Diego. But bottom line, the first Tuesday of December at the what's the golf course?
I don't know yet.
The golf course is TBD, but we did it at La Costa.
Okay.
And you get to golf with the Hall of Famers. So one of the 181 Hall of Famers alive, you get to golf with. That's all I got.
And now San Marcos.
She's better than me at doing all that. And to reiterate that, every time we go in these clubs, it kind of brings me back to when I was a little guy, because they look at you, man, with their eyes open. And again, our incentive for them is reading books in a certain amount of time. We use a game of football to encourage them, and they go to a game with me. The top readers that read these books get to go to an NFL game and have the experience of a lifetime of going on a sideline and meeting their favorite player and doing all that stuff. So, and they get a reading room too. So that's what we do, and we've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years now. So it's very fulfilling. Very fulfilling, and she's pretty good at telling that story.
We could tell it. It's great to see that, that level of passion, that level of excitement, because anybody on this call, anybody watching this can make a difference, right? But the reality is I go out on a limb to say, whether it's 50 people or 1,000 people that are going to watch this, is that none of us have the reach that your name does, that your legacy does. You know what I mean? So to be able, you can impact 100 people where we can impact 2 or 3. Everyone could do their part. But, talking about San Marcos, we're going to have Stefano go check that out, that reading room up there when everything calms down. That's his neck of the woods up there.
I'll definitely be checking it out for sure.
Dave, I got
let me
one
in.
more thing.
Go ahead.
On Andre's Instagram, one of our biggest costs is buying brand new books, because we're kind of sick and tired of giving them hand-me-down books that are garbage. So for $8.30, 83, you can donate on Andre's Instagram. There's just a little PayPal link, and that buys one book to bring to a club. It sounds like a little bit, but it adds up. Like 100 books to a club is like kids start fighting over. We don't buy the corny old books. We buy the books that are hot, top sellers. So $8.30 on Andre's
Instagram
bio link.
What's your handle on Instagram, Andre?
My Instagram is Andre_Reed83. That's my Instagram and my Twitter. And so that's there's a link there in the bio to donate books, because books are really at a premium now. I mean, it's hard to get books that are being donated. And again, it's really important that these kids have this, because some of these kids that I talk to are, believe it or not, they're on their way. And I've met a lot of youth of the years in a lot of different clubs. I go to the youth of the year celebration in Washington every year. I go to the convention every year, wherever it was. It was in San Diego 2 years ago. And the Boys and Girls Club does a great job, not only with what they do, but how they mentor these kids to be great human beings. And that's really what it's about.
Absolutely. Andre, if you got time, we got one more question that came through. This from Ricky Haisha, who is an insurance agent here in San Diego. He says, which players or coaches do you believe ought to be in the NFL Hall of Fame that are not today, and why?
We would be here until next week for that one. Oh man, that's such a great question, because I get the Hall calls me every year and gives me, they talk about different guys, and obviously the writers are the ones that vote every year for the candidates going into the Hall. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have been waiting for years. One guy, Drew Pearson, a former receiver, he deserves to be in there. He's waited a long time. He's all decade of the 70s, and there's so many guys that deserve it. Is the system flawed? I mean, to a certain point, maybe, but I just hope all these guys that have been waiting, get their shot and get in because they deserve it. Next year with COVID, again, they're going to induct 5 more in February. Peyton Manning's up this year, so obviously Peyton Manning's going to be in this year. And then they have to induct the 5 guys that were supposed to go in August, in 2 weeks, actually. And then the Centennial guys that got inducted, to 15 Centennial guys. So it's going to be a whirlwind in 2021 there in Canton with all these guys being up there being inducted. But there's a lot of guys that deserve to be there. We'd be here all day. I can go down a list of a lot of guys that deserve to be there. I hope.
What about one guy that was on those Bills teams? Out of all the guys that made the Hall, the next guy you think that should be up?
Well, Steve Tasker has been in the semifinals for a while. This year, he was in the he wasn't in the semis. I think he was in the semis last year. He was there probably 8 years. And I thought this year was going to be a break. I thought he was going to get over the hump and get in the finals. And once you're in the finals, you're in the finals every year until you get in. They don't just take you out of the finals.
Okay.
So I'm hoping now that he's on the senior committee. I think he's up for that next year or the year after, but definitely deserves to be there. I think he was the greatest special teams player ever. And obviously I'm biased because he was my teammate, but he won a lot of football games for us by himself. He was like offense, defense, special teams all put together. And he actually, when I was hurt one year, he actually came in and played receiver and did a great job. So Steve Tasker definitely does deserve to be there. Ken Hall, I think, definitely deserves to be there. Rest in peace, Kent. Cornelius Bennett, I think, deserves to be there. Darryl Talley's like right on the line. I think Darryl, unfortunately, he was on a team with Bruce Smith and all these other guys. But I think Darryl's always in the question every year. He gets on the ballot every year. But it's such a hard thing. It's such a hard thing, man. It's so hard for all these writers to say, okay, this guy deserves to be in this year, but we know this guy deserves to be in there. It's a tough battle, and all these guys are going against each other with their, talking about each candidate and trying to give the best form for them, their accolades, to the writers. And it's the Hall of Fame is tough. Any Hall of Fame is tough.
You know what it is when you talk about someone like Steve Tasker. I mean, I'm in my late 30s now, and so I grew up basically in your time, right? These were the guys I looked up to,
right?
And Tasker, looking back, was the first, like the only guy before the Kasim Osgoods and the David Tyrees of the world, right? That you look back, you're like, who do I remember that was a special teams ace? Yeah. And it was Tasker.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at a guy like Devin Hester, I think next to Dion was probably the greatest kick returner. Yeah. I mean, are they going to have, is he going to go in the Hall of Fame as a kick returner? Or if he goes in as special teams, then definitely Tasker deserves to be there, even though he wasn't a kick returner like Devin Hester. So they got a lot of things to sort out besides inducting 25 guys next year. And the criteria hasn't changed. I think every candidate has certain criteria that each writer has to vote on. And some guys are stats guys, some guys are championship guys, some guys are Super Bowls, some guys. So it's a constant this all the time with this. So, but everybody that deserves to be on a ballot to me is a Hall of Famer to me, because you just don't get put on there because you played 5 years and you had a couple good seasons. I think you deserve to be on there because they really consider you being a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Andre, I see one comment, which appears to be my wife, who says she's going to be donating Reading is Power. So thank you for that. At least I know when I see the credit card bill, it'll be for a great cause, and it won't be in an Amazon box directly to our house. So I think we're going to be good there.
I thank you. I thank what you're doing. I thank everybody that's been watching. Hopefully I gave a little bit of insight of me as a person and how I, how I went about my football career and that mindset up here that I had that permeated to everybody. And we all have to have that champion mindset so everybody can see that, so they can get better and they can have that mindset. In times right now where it's, people are losing their jobs and, the pandemic and racial inequality, we got so many things going on in 2020. We got to start a clean slate here, in this country. And, it's up to us to do that. And I think we can make the comeback, man. That's what it's about. It's a comeback. Just like LL said, don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years.
It's fantastic.
I've been here for years, man.
Stefano, any final words, Stefano?
Andre, thank you so much. Really enjoyed listening to the lessons that you learned through your career. I think the only question I have for you is obviously, what you guys did was unprecedented, right? Still is. And you were a great leader. You were around great leaders. What would you say is the one thing, right, that our leadership in this country and within our communities needs to get people to follow them to the right places?
I know this might sound funny, but we all got to listen. I think we got to listen to each other, and we have to be mindful of, people's how they grew up and all that kind. We got to be mindful of that, and we got to have a kind of a soft heart, and we got to listen, and we just got to listen. I think this country, we don't listen enough. We think we know everything, and I got all the answers, but you really don't have all the answers. Sometimes you need to listen to formulate what your answer might be. And we as a country have to listen a little more and not be quick to judge. Stay in your own lane, do what you're supposed to do, and have people follow your lead. And, we got to be leaders and be the right leader at the right time. And it seems like we're all looking for that. And it starts in our own communities, number one, and in places where you guys are, in your offices and in the business world. That's really what we need. We need leaders in business. We need leaders in the community. That's really going to get this country together, is the people in that area coming together and, setting the tone for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Excellent. Andre, well, thank you so much. It was a great honor to have you be a part of this. What we're trying to do, like this speaking series on Zoom, every month or so with
Exactly.
the honorary guest. And, for the work that we do, obviously day in, day out is nothing compared to what we see you do and the changes you make in the community with your power and in your position that you have. So it's awesome to see that being done. And if there's anything that we could do, albeit however small reach we have, to help get your message out there, obviously how to get a hold of us, and we'll always be able to do that and help you out. And whether it's the Reading Foundation, we're going to make sure we get that word out there to donate on the Instagram link, to get that word out there, to start in our community, listen to your advice, obviously, start where we are, stay in our own lane first, get ourselves right, do our own stuff, and then make sure we're able to help everybody else.
Exactly. And again, the golf tournament, we'll give you information on that. We get Hall of Famers coming in. We have a great time. We raise money for the foundation for the reading program, and we just have a blast, man. And it's all fun. And I'm sure it's called the Ugly Christmas Sweater Golf Tournament. So I don't know if you saw it last year. I was on ESPN on a call from the golf tournament, speaking with I don't know who the guy was with ESPN. And we had Ronnie Lott here, Tim Brown. We had a bunch of other Warren Moon was here. So we try to bring all these guys in, not only that have their own foundations of what they do, but they're all about helping people and making this world better. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, we'll definitely help out any way we can. Again, Andre, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, being here. And anytime you guys want to talk to me again, we could talk about the same stuff, and hopefully the Bills will win the Super Bowl.
I'd love to have that conversation, Andre. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you for attending. Thank you for viewing this. Again, David Shapiro, Stefano Malea, the law office is David Shapiro in San Diego, criminal defense law firm. happy to have Andre Reed here. So everyone have a great night. Andre, thank you again.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, guys, take care.